join me in prayer? Lord, thank you for gathering us together today. On this Good Shepherd Sunday, open our ears and our hearts as we hear your word, and be with us as we carry it with us in the week ahead. Amen. This morning's scripture comes from the book of John, chapter 10. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must also bring them. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to you.
Was it a bobcat? A cougar? A badger? These were the questions that Jill is my wife, Jill and I were asking each other as we took turns looking through the binoculars at two small cat-like animals scavenging around in our backyard for breakfast one morning this week. We concluded that one of them was this feral cat who's adopted our yard as his own with the promise of mice and 13 striped squirrels for sustenance. But the other animal, we were less sure. We checked out the pictures on the internet, yet none matched the shape of the ears and the gray body with the whitish face. And this goes on for some time, and then Jill finally points to this deck behind our house, and she says there's this small carpet that the wind had rolled up, and she wants it unrolled, and she indicates that she had seen the feral cat hiding in there, and now would there be one cat or two cats hiding in this carpet? So I said the obvious thing that every husband would say to his wife to encourage her, well, go unroll it and find out. She looked at me like I had lost my mind. And she said to me, well, you go unroll it. Which of course I would have done, except noting the time, I said I have to go to work. This, my friends, is not the model of a good shepherd. The good shepherd would have marched right out there and, fearing neither feral cat nor baby bobcat, unfurled that carpet. That's the model that Jesus is teaching about. When he said he's the good shepherd, he's contrasting his style of leadership with the hired hands leadership, the ones who took care of the sheep until they figured out that there might be cats in the carpet. Well, not exactly. But you get the idea, right? Here's the thing about sheep. Sheep need a leader. They need someone to protect them, not only from the outside threat of wolves, but also from themselves. You see, the background of Jesus' story is the life of sheep and shepherds who lived in the desert areas around Israel where Jesus lived. When the nighttime came, the shepherds would take their grazing sheep, they'd been out in the desert grazing, looking for something to eat, and then the shepherd would lead them into some naturally encased area in a hill or a mountainside or something like that, where they would have a sort of enclosure, and then to protect the entry into the enclosure, the shepherd would himself lie down. And earlier in the verses before where we started today, Jesus says, I am the gate. So Jesus is the one who lies in front of the sheep to protect them. And that's the background of where we are today. So the contrast that Jesus is making is how he is the shepherd who stays to fight the wolves. That's the meaning. When he says, I'm the good shepherd, it's not good as compared to bad. It's good by this is how you ought to do it. The hired hands that Jesus talks about are not necessarily wicked people. They're not wicked people. They're not bad shepherds. They're just different. They're the hired hands. They're not the model shepherd that Jesus is. And why? Well, they don't own the sheep. They're hired hands. So their investment, their commitment diminishes when the wolf shows up. They look at the teeth of the wolf and they do a quick calculus. Let's see. This wolf will eat me or one of my boss's sheep. I choose the sheep. The good or the model shepherd will fight the wolf to the death to save every last sheep. That's Jesus. We are the sheep. That, my friends, is the point. We are the sheep, and Jesus is the good or the model shepherd, the one who will do whatever is necessary to protect us, his sheep. Why? Because he is the owner. And not only is he the owner, he knows each of us by name. Like Charlie. Jesus knows his name. In fact, God knew Charlie and knew his name, Charles Raymond, from before the world was formed. Much less before he was formed in his mama's womb. So Jesus, the day Charlie enters the world, says, "There's one of my sheep. I will protect him. I will save him because he is mine." Really? Mine. So why would a shepherd give up his life for some sheep? Was he trying to prove his love for the sheep as if the sheep would know the difference, right? I mean, the shepherd doesn't toss himself off a cliff declaring, "See how much I love you," Don Carson says. The point is that the sheep are in mortal danger. So he loses his life in their defense. That's what makes him good. You see, Charlie was in mortal danger. So was I. So are you. We, in our sin, could not overcome the eternal death that awaited each of us. So Jesus looked the danger of death in the face, and he defeated it. And that's why we celebrate this story on this fourth Sunday of Easter. Because when Jesus confronted death, what he confronted was not only the cross, was not only the tomb, but also the resurrection. They are one and the same. For from the cross to the resurrection is the story of the Good Shepherd. That Jesus goes through to save his sheep. And so all the sheep in the pen are now safe from eternal death forever. We have the assurance that the work of the Good Shepherd is done. There is no more to be done. The enemy has been defeated. And so, as Carla McClurg says, our goal in life is not to become smarter, braver, more impressive sheep, but simply more trusting of the shepherd. Our primary task is to be who we are, sheep in need of a shepherd. That's the work of the church. But it's also the work of the parents. It's also the work of you as a family who have gathered here today as witnesses. Your job only begins today. Your job, when you are given possession of Charlie to watch over him, when all of you care for children that are in your lives, your job, as we say in our baptismal covenant, is to care for those children, to teach them to pray with them, to make sure that they grow up knowing the love of Jesus. Now, I would like to say something else about that. I know that some of you have been praying for your children and your grandchildren for all of your lives, and you don't yet see how that prayer has been answered as you would like it. I want to assure you of this, though. Will you hear what Jesus says? I know my sheep. Don't worry. You see, the point is not that the sheep know Jesus. The point is that Jesus knows the sheep. And Jesus will bring them in. You remember the famous story in the Bible, right? Where Jesus leaves aside the 99 to go look for the one. And there's other stories like that that we can tell. I want to give you this assurance. Keep on praying. Keep on teaching the children to pray. Keep on worshiping. Keep on praying that your children will worship with you, that they'll worship in wherever community they are. Do not fear, though, for Jesus has it figured out. Don't worry that we don't see the evidence now. Trust in the shepherd. Be a sheep that trusts in the shepherd. So what is our role? Our role is through children in worship. Our role is in a vacation Bible school. Our role is in the 30-hour famine. Our role is in all of the other programming that we do for children that we want to talk about on May 6th, that and other things. And what is the point of all of that? Why do it? Just to give ourselves more stuff to do in calendars that are too crowded already to make us feel guilty when we can't show up? No, that's not the point. The point is to teach Charlie the voice of Jesus. That's our role. That people would know the voice of Jesus. How will Charlie know what the voice of Jesus sounds like unless someone, you, the church, his church family, his biological family, his parents, how will he know the voice of Jesus unless we teach him? That's what we're called to do. That's the exciting work of the church. You know, suppose that we lived in a place where wolves really did attack our children. Is there any doubt that the mothers and fathers and grandpas and grandmas would spend hours teaching little children like Charlie the difference between a wolf and a cat? You would make that your highest priority. Don't go out among the wolves. Well, we're facing wolves, spiritual wolves. Is it our highest priority to teach them to run to the shepherd when they see a wolf? How will they know if we don't teach them? What we have so much trouble seeing and believing is that there are still wolves, spiritual wolves out there from which our children, from which we need protection. I was speaking to someone recently who was going through a great deal of stress as the wolves of life surrounded her. But then she discovered that really the wolves were at bay. They were not winning. She was protected at every turn. And her words to me were better than I could write. She said, the more I focus on how I see God's hand at work, the more I am able to overcome my fear of an unknown future. I keep getting stronger because of the assurance of the faithfulness of God. And then she admitted, but Pastor Bill, it took me a long while to get there. It's the work of a lifetime, isn't it, friends? Life is hard. Wolves lurk at the gate. That much we get. It takes a while to believe, to trust the voice of the shepherd, leading us out of the danger and into life, into light. But that's what's required. We need to learn how to recognize and then to trust the voice that says, come toward me, come toward me. I will bring you to safety. It was September 11th. The day the phrase 9/11 became famous, infamous. A CNN reporter describes this scene from Washington, D.C. Isaac Hoapie was tracking reports of the World Trade Center attacks when he heard a dispatcher say over the radio, the plane ran into the Pentagon, emergency, emergency, emergency. So Pentagon police officer Isaac jumps into his car and bolts toward the fire, stopping and then running toward the crash site. Among the first officers on the scene, he saw plane parts scattered over the ground, small pockets of fire and charred trees. He said everything was disintegrated. And the scene inside the Pentagon, even more horrific. Isaac says there's so much disaster inside. Walls, cubicles, tables, chairs. It's all blown to pieces, and some walls had caved in. And then he said people began to trickle out, male or female, black or white. You couldn't tell them apart, they were so badly burned. But many others remained trapped inside. So Isaac, wearing just his lightweight work clothes, carrying no special equipment, rushes in and begins to carry people from the building onto the grass 100 yards away. He says, my job was just to react, and when you react, it's like tunnel vision. You try to focus and your adrenaline kicks in. You realize you just don't know what you're doing except you're saving lives. And after several trips back and forth, Isaac works his way in as far as possible, and then he begins yelling to those still trapped further inside. His hands and arms severely burned, the room pitch black, the air choked with smoke. William Wayne Sinclair, well, his world had been violently turned upside down. Sinclair had no clue where to go or what to do until he heard a man yell, "If you can hear me, head toward my voice. If you can hear me, head toward my voice." He kept saying it over and over, Sinclair said, and that's what guided us out of the smoke and fire. At times we can all relate to that, can't we? Being trapped inside when life is burning around us. What circumstances of your life today make you feel that way? Your health? Someone else's health? Your finances? Your relationships? Your job? Will listen for the voice that is calling you out of the dark and into the light. You see, though this story isn't only about us, there are a lot of other sheep out there, right? There are sheep in Nepal. There are sheep around this world. And there's this little sheep too. There are these sheep around the world that Jesus says, you go and you invite them in. And you'll be surprised who's going to be standing with you in that pen. Who would have known the day that I had the pleasure of marrying that fine young couple that one day here we would be holding Charlie? You know, the work of the church, it isn't to save people. Jesus did that. The work of the church is to create a community, a place that's wide open, that is affirming, that says to people, we don't care what your past is. You come on in. You're welcome here. The work of the church is to be a place where Charlie and sinners all say, I feel included here. I don't feel like I'm some outcast. I don't feel like who I am is going to turn them off to me. That's the work of the church. That's the work of this church. Who do you think you'll be surprised one day to be standing next to in the sheep pen? You see, we become the voices. We become the people, not who decide who comes in, but to prepare a place for them. To create a community that offers open spaces, affirming words, and welcoming hugs for people just like Charlie, and as different from him as you can imagine. We become the voices which keep shouting through the din created by the noise of the world. Here are the paths which the Good Shepherd created Here is the way to the green pastures and the quiet waters. Here is a table with a place for you. And people you can't imagine you'd be sitting next to for dinner. Follow us. Follow the voice through the cold and dark night. Follow this voice which is at once calling you gently and at the same time saying to the evil one and the wolves who work for him, you stay away, because this one is mine. Really?